welcome. Today I am with attorney Nick Masington. Nick has been practicing up in Northeast PA since 1990. So he's been doing this lawyering stuff for a pretty darn long time. He divides his time between his firm's offices in Monroe County, Bethlehem office, Carbon County, and Pike County office, where he works with his wife, his chief operating officer, and his son Dylan, who serves as his paralegal. So this is like a for real family enterprise with the Massingtons. From day one, he's devoted the bulk of his practice to the areas of divorce, family, and domestic relations law. And over the years has served thousands of clients in that capacity. He takes a no-nonsense, hardworking approach to his cases, and his focus is aimed at obtaining the best results possible in the shortest time possible at the least expense possible for his clients, which is a near impossibility. But if that's what your focus is, that's a good thing.
We do
So
our
thanks for
best.
being here with me today, Nick.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for having me, Jeff. Pleasure.
All right, with me reading your little profile here, I guess if there's anything you want to open up with to share about yourself, your practice, how you got to where you are now.
I started out very early in my career. I did a couple of other things, but I would say I've done exclusively family law and domestic relations law for, I don't think I've touched another case in probably 25 years. So for the first 10 years, you did a smattering of this and that. But from day one, it was always divorce, custody, child support. I call it the big five: divorce, custody, child support, alimony, property, and then of course you have to add protection from abuse and that
So
kind of stuff.
you're a glutton for punishment, right?
It's interesting. People always ask me because in the legal world, um, family law is I think considered the bottom feeder stuff for a lot of reasons. It's difficult, it's emotional, it's not the most lucrative financially. You're never going to get $100,000 fee in a day like a personal injury attorney. You can't charge flat fees of $20,000 like a good criminal attorney. So it's very, very tough. The reason I always liked it from an intellectual standpoint is it's fairly easy to navigate as a young lawyer because you're dealing with common sense things. A lot of this stuff is common sense. Custody is common sense, and it's kind of, as opposed to having to memorize very detailed statutes and whatnot. And but it is tough. It is tough. And I just hired a new associate, and she's going to be doing some divorce with me, and she's also going to be doing bankruptcy. I said, here's the main difference: your bankruptcy clients always love you because you always help them, and they recognize that you've helped them. You've made their life better. Absolutely 100% across the board. They are better off when you leave. Divorce clients and custody clients usually are as well. They just don't know that. They don't recognize that all the time. And so sometimes they tend to try to make you the bad guy. And when I hire, when I get hired, I have a sheet I send out that's called the rules of engagement. And rule number one is: you're angry, don't be angry at me. I didn't tell you to marry her. I wasn't. You didn't ask me. I wasn't there. So it is tough, but you get used to it. You get used to it. I'm After 35 years, I'm getting to the point where I'd like to start slowing down a little bit in terms of generally, but we're still here. Still here. And at this point,
So
we have, I believe, five offices now. We just opened an office last year in Pittston, which I guess is Luzerne County, and we opened an office out in Cranberry Township, right outside of Pittsburgh.
oh,
So we've got a bunch of stuff going on.
well, that cranberry, how do you that's you're like going from one corner of the state down to the other corner
Yeah,
of
I'm not. We actually were able to pick up a young lady out there who was leaving a law firm out there. She was friendly with one of my partners. She had done exclusively family law for I think 10, 12 years, and was looking to kind of go out on her own. And so rather than go out independently, we said, hey, why don't we send the ARM logo out there, and you can use our infrastructure, and she's doing very well. So we're hoping to add people out there. But yeah, no, we don't travel that far. We don't travel that far.
Maybe we can get you here in Center County at some point.
I'll tell you, it's not out of the question. I mean, my goal is as I go into the twilight of my practicing years is to really focus on the expansion of the firm, the growth of the firm, and the future of the firm. As you said, it's a family business. My son, who's actually in the room with me right now, is he does some paralegal work and he does our social media, which is how you and I managed to get connected. And my daughter is currently a public defender here in Carbon County, getting her licks in before she comes into private practice, and she wants to do criminal. So no better experience for a young criminal lawyer than an understaffed public defender's office in a small county where you're just going to get hit with everything. So she's out there doing that right now, but she'll join us eventually.
So you'd mentioned you and Dylan had been working on a project with some videos that you were doing. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. It's called Legal Ink, and ink is spelled INK, not INC. It's a little play on words based on the fact that when my son and I aren't doing the law thing, we run a mixed martial arts gym, which is actually in the same building as my one law office. He's a professional submission fighter. He's been training and competing for 20 years. So it's a heavily tattooed business. So we are heavily tattooed people. So it's a little play on that. It's called Legal Ink. We're just getting it launched. It's on TikTok, and I think a couple of the other platforms. What we ended up doing is we do short videos, and it's usually top 5 videos. And it's real. It's all real world practical stuff that just comes from the archives of my mind, having done this. I don't know. People always ask me how many have you done? How many divorces have you done? This and that. I don't know. Every single day, 6 to 7 days a week for 35 years, you figure it out. It's a lot, and you pick up on some nuance. A lot of times people say you should write a book. I don't know that there's enough interesting stuff there. So I think these short lists are better. If you're in that mode, if you're going to a support conference, if you're going to a custody conference, if you're going into a divorce case, if you're hiring an attorney, I mean, it's just the things you need to know. I think they're going to be fun and successful eventually. I just got to find more time to devote to them. I'll get there.
So some of those topics I think would be interesting to talk about. I guess rolling with that, a lot of the fathers who you talk to them at the outset, they never expected any of this. As you know, divorces are initiated roughly 70% of the time by women. They've been doing advanced planning, right? While
Yep.
the guy's been oblivious.
Yep.
And then
Absolutely.
all of a sudden it hits them like a big, sack across the head. So, uh, and there's different stages to that. Sometimes people are trying to reconcile, keep it going, because as a man, your family's been important to you and you love this person or care about this person. And, so if you're someone who's at that state and they're slow on the uptake on kind of things, while again, the other person is in a different space making business decisions, right?
Sure.
And so for one of these people who it's new and it's just hitting them, and they got to kind of start to orient themselves to what's going on. What would you say to the clients that come to you at that stage of the process?
Yeah, so a couple of things. Let's just backtrack a moment, and I'll give you my, if you don't mind, I'll
Yep.
give you my theory on why more divorces are filed by women as opposed to men.
Okay.
And I think it comes down to just the fundamental difference between the sexes. There was a book many, many years ago. I never read it, have no idea what it said. Men are from Mars, women are from Venus, or something of that nature.
Yeah.
But I would assume it falls along these lines. The reason, in my experience, most men are shocked or surprised or whatever is we have different wants in life. Men want the bareness, the basics. We want to have a roof over our head, bills to be paid, um, you know, a 6-pack on a Friday night, quart of choice on a Sunday, etc. Gas in the car, kids are fed, and as long as everything's stable and everything's taken care of, and all the basic needs of everybody are met, that's it. That's life. That's success. We as men, I don't think, talk about happiness and being fulfilled and this, that, and the other thing. I mean, I'm going to be 60 this year. I don't think any of my friends and I have ever talked about, gee, but are you really happy? It's just not something we do. We don't do that. So a lot of marriages that have been dead for a long time, we don't notice or don't care because, again, those needs are met. Women want more. They want happiness. They want fulfillment. They want romance. They want excitement. They want this and that. And when they're not getting it, that's when I think they tend to go. And it's that pleasure and pain principle. When the pain of staying outweighs the pain of going, they'll eventually file and they'll go. And that's why I think so many men are surprised because they go, wait a second, we didn't have any problems. We weren't fighting. We weren't hitting each other. And also I think there's a tendency for women to be more willing, and I think it ties in with that, to go into the unknown. I'm going to go. I'm going to go find this stuff out there. Men don't go anywhere unless they have an answer. You're not quitting this job unless there's a job lined up. You're not breaking up with this prom date unless unless the next step is there. So when I find men that tend to file, that usually means they have found something else and they're moving on in their lives. Whereas
Yeah.
women just want to go elsewhere. Does that make sense?
Yep, yep, 100%.
And I think that's accurate across the board. Accurate across the board. So in terms of if a woman files and a man comes to me, first thing I say is this: look, I don't want to leave you with a bad feeling or bad taste, but here's the bottom line: it takes two to tango. She's not dancing. The dance is over. Well, can we do counseling? Absolutely, you can do marriage counseling. I'll put your file on hold. I'll see you in 3 months. Well, what does that mean? It means I've never seen it work. If you've taken the step, if either party has gotten to the point where they have picked up that phone, called an attorney, made an appointment, sat down with that attorney, and initiated a divorce action, I don't
Yep.
know. I'm trying to think of a case where people went back and were successful. I've had it in my own personal life. So it's funny, I've had friends that have broken up with women in our social circle, and I warn all my other friends, don't say anything about his wife. Well, but they're broken up. Don't say anything about his wife. Why? Because they're going to get back together. Oh no, they're never going to get back together. She was a you know what. She was a this, that, and the other thing. It's there. Shut up, be quiet. Why? And then 3 months later, they show up at dinner. Oh, hey, we're back together. And by the way, you know what you said about my wife? It's so, but ultimately it will fail. I hate to be that guy, but yeah, if she's already out the door that far,
Yep.
my guess is we're going down this road. So you need to prepare. Now, look, if you want to go through the whole process and we get you secured and get your stuff taken care of, et cetera, and you guys want to get back together down the road, great. But every marital settlement agreement I write says this is not revoked on reconciliation. This survives reconciliation because those reconciliations also rarely last. So really, I tell them we've got to get ready, and we've got to get our ducks in order. Now, what that means could be a number of different things. I think there's a myth, and I call it a myth because it's probably like most myths or most theories, it's probably rooted in some type of truth from a long time ago. I've been practicing since 1990. So I don't know anything about the divorce laws before 1990. And I also have to be honest, I don't know about the divorce laws anywhere else in the country. So my wife said to me one day, she said, oh my God, did you see Donald Trump's going to shake away the 50-50 divorce law? I said, well, it doesn't matter. We've never had that. Pennsylvania is not a 50-50 Commonwealth. So it doesn't matter to me. But you get into the divorce context like that to get up to speed very quickly on what do I have. So I think the theory is, oh, the man always gets robbed. Man gets taken to the cleaners. That's usually true, but it has nothing to do with his plumbing. It has to do with the fact that traditionally, and still to this day in many relationships, the man is the superior earning spouse. So if you are the superior earning spouse, if you are the one in a better financial situation, you are going to lose. The greatest client I can have in a divorce context is the person, and I have had many over the years, never worked, never written a check, never, stayed home with kids, kept the house, husband took care of all the bills, et cetera, et cetera. It's the greatest client I can have because you can only take from the other person and give to my client in that sense. There's nothing this client can give to the other side. I can only take. The worst client I can have is a successful human being. You come into me with a good paying job, retirement benefits, health insurance, et cetera, et cetera. I can only take from you and give the other. We can only divide the pot that's there. And if the pot, if that pie is all on your plate, then Jeff, I've got to take from your plate. I mean, that's it. There's nowhere else to take from. What's perpetuated over the years is the idea that that's gender based. It's not. It's finance based. It's finance based, and it just so happens that in history, up until, I mean, you see the old shows and the old TV ads from the 50s and 60s, with the woman in the dress with the pearls cleaning with, and you should be happy to get a new apron. And look, honey, I bought you a vacuum cleaner. I mean, so back in those days, sure. Now it's not always that way. And now you're seeing a lot more even financial marriages where both parties come in with assets and whatnot. So I think it's really spreading itself out. So I like to dispel that myth.
Relative to the assets,
Mm-hmm.
the sticking point for me, almost every one of them say, I don't care about the money. It's the time
Mm-hmm.
with my kid. And so
Mm-hmm.
there's a break on that relative to the differentiation with custody, from
Mm-hmm.
my observation, is what I would throw out.
Okay, let's talk about that. I agree with you in certain cases. Yes, is custody gender biased? Used to be. Historically, custody was very gender biased. When I came into the practice, we were just getting out of that. And when you hit some of the older judges, there was definitely a, well, but she's mom. Um, and so, we, forgive me, it was the penis rule. If you have one, you don't qualify. If you don't, you do. Monroe County, where I primarily have practiced for the last 35 years, was actually one of the cutting edge counties in changing that. We had a judge that was elected. She was actually elected to the bench. She was the first female judge in Monroe County history. It was literally the year I got here, 35 years ago. And I remember it well because she ran against one of the partners in the firm that I had been hired by, and she won. And she immediately declared that the bias in favor of women would no longer be accepted in Monroe County, and that and she actually went almost too far the other way. It was the same penis rule, just in reverse. If you had one, you won, and that was it.
Wow.
So it was, there were many years where, and it was, she was notorious. Do not bring a woman in front of Judge so and so, or you're going to lose. And I very foolishly, like the kid in the Emperor with no clothes, was at a seminar once where she was, and she said, "Well, it's about time the pendulum swung the other way." And I said, "Forgive me, Judge, but isn't the pendulum supposed to end up in the middle?" I'm a guy's guy. I run an MMA gym. I am the biggest supporter of fathers and men, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I also represent women, and not every guy out there is great. I think the other problem, Jeff, is every guy comes in and says it's about the kids. It's all about the kids. I want time with my kids, and 60% of them are probably telling you the truth. 30-40% of them are worried about the support. They know that if we get over a certain amount of overnights a year, we're going to get lowered support. When they find out that it's not that much of a lower, and they go, wait a second, I'm going to have my kids half the time and I still have to pay this much? Yeah. Wasn't that going to cost me more? Yeah. Because you're paying for them, whatever. So you've got those, but you've also got to be self-aware. Um, I am one of the biggest criticisms anybody that knows me will give you is I'm an overindulgent father. My kids are spoiled. My kids are 30 and 28. They are incredibly spoiled. One's sitting in this room right now. He works for me. He set this up for me. My other one's down the street. I'm driving her to the airport in an hour. I am involved every day with my kids, and I am incredibly overindulgent. But when they were little, I I didn't do doctors. I didn't do school. I didn't do. I mean, I did extracurricular activities, but I didn't do parent teacher meetings. Moms did. I didn't. I wouldn't have known where their pediatrician was. I didn't know what size clothes they wore. I didn't do it. My wife for a number of years stayed home with the kids, so she was what we call the primary custodian. I made sure that every minute that I wasn't working, trying to build what we're at now, I was with them. Um, Not every father does that. They think they do, but they don't. You know, the Eagles are on Sunday. I'm watching the Eagles. Well, no, you take your kids outside and play. So we've got to get down to the reality of how involved were you, and that's really what custody is going to come down to in a lot of situations is what's your availability and how involved were you, and the availability is the big thing too, because the other problem, I have a guy right now just called me. He just hired me. He said my wife is, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it's practical thing. I own the home. It's not, they're not married. Forgive me. They're not married. I own the home. We have two kids together. I'm going to be evicting her. I'm staying in the house. I want the kids to stay in the house and I want them to stay in their school, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Said, sounds fantastic. Really good basis for it. Mom has some issues. I said, that's fantastic. Okay, so let me just ask you a first question. What do you do? Okay. What are your work hours? I work from 2 in the afternoon until 10 o'clock at night. And I said, wait a second. Your kids are in school. Yes. They're like fifth and sixth grade. Yes. What time do they get home from school? He goes, 3 o'clock. What time do they go to bed? 9:30. I go, and you were working from 2 to 10, Monday through Friday. Yes. I said, okay, what court's going to give you primary custody? Well, I can get a babysitter. So I said, so you just got to be realistic, and again, I don't want to sound like I am hugely supportive of fathers' rights, hugely supportive, but they've got to be realistic. You've got to look at your work schedule. You've got to be an involved father. You've got to know, and judges love to play that trick. When somebody comes in and says, well, I want 50-50 custody. Great. What's your kid's pediatrician's name? I don't know. Who's your kid's best friend in school? I don't know. What's your child's teacher's name? I don't know. What's your child's shoe size? I don't know. And the judges will do that just to weed that out. When I do meet with my guys and my male clients, I make sure that we have all that covered. I mean, you need to be involved. If you haven't been involved, you need to get involved and you need to stay involved. And if we do that, we're usually very successful. I mean, I don't know, I would say at least 50% of my cases end up with dad having primary custody these days. And we're
Wow.
going towards a lot of 50-50 too, which has its strengths and weaknesses as well. I think that's tough on the kids, but if it works, it works. And I think it depends on what age you started. You started from 2 years old, they don't know any different. That's it. You know what you grow up with. But if you're 14 and all of a sudden you're living between two houses week on, week off, I think it could be troublesome. So I
You
probably
got
gave
to
you,
be in the same general area, right?
gotta be in the
First
same
off.
geography. Sometimes it works beautifully. I just think it's cumbersome with kids, but it is difficult. I have gotten in trouble probably more times than I can count in probably every county in Northeast Pennsylvania because I'm very blunt. And when I represent either side, and the other side says, I get this all the time. I want to file for custody. Great. And I'm not even going to make this a gender based thing. I want to file for custody. Great. What do you have? Two kids. Great. All right. What's the current custody schedule? I haven't seen them. Why not? The other side won't let me see them. Okay. Well, how long's that been? About 18 months now. And I go, and I've said this in court many times. I said, ma'am, sir, whoever I'm talking to, my kids are 28 and 30. If I don't talk to both of them today, somebody's going to be in big trouble, and there's going to be blood. You haven't talked to your kid in 18 months and you're just coming to me now, and that's where it kind of gets disingenuous a little bit. So you can't wait. You can't pause. If you're really going to make a serious play for custody or any type of custody, you got to do it from the get-go. You've got to get it right off the bat and say, hey, I even like to have custody worked out before the parties even separate. And the new laws allow you to do that. Allows you to go in and get a custody order before anybody even moves out of the house. That way, there's no guesswork.
The one thing I'd say with that is the people, most of the fathers who come to us are really scrambling and they're in a deep hole. I'd say that, and this is something we kind of had a communication about representing and not representing each other. My experience in life, even prior to doing this, is that any vocation, whether it's teachers, doctors, medical profession, blue collar profession, it's the 20% rule. You got 20% of them who are really good, 20% are good, 20 average, 20 below average, and 20 who shouldn't even be doing it, right?
Right.
And this extends to the legal system too. Judges, frankly, and even lawyers, by my observation. And I think that people who get into these things,
Well, I think it's worse for judges.
I,
No, I
I
do.
would,
Remember, that's an elected position. They
yeah,
didn't
no,
earn that.
yep, no
That was
debate
that
on
was a
that.
that was a political election. That doesn't mean anything to me.
Yep,
It's
yep.
that wasn't, oh, I've worked my way up the ladder and now I'm judge. That was, hey, I was with the popular party that year and I got elected. So yeah, don't ever, yeah. I I just had that talk with my daughter as she started practicing law. I said, don't give people more credit they're entitled to.
Don't be under the delusion that they're all 100 out of 100 are all knowing, well balanced. Yeah, right.
I think your numbers were generous uh, across the board. I think it's more of a 20 adequate and the other 80 questionable. That's just me across the board.
I can attest to that. Again, like I said, I've
You
I've
know,
been in a lot of courts and with a lot of judges. Yes. So, but
absolutely.
but either way, though. So what happens is, um, they are fighting, but they're dealing with situations where they keep filing for contempt and nothing happens,
Right.
right? And okay, then the custody interference. Okay, so we're going to try to get, and the cops are like, we don't want in the middle of this. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? I mean, there are
Well,
people who legitimately are
no,
fighting, but are just
I,
absolutely powerless over what they're
you're
involved
you're correct, and I have to assume if a guy is tapping your platforms as a resource, that's one of the serious ones. That's one of the ones you're right. I mean, I am not by any means just saying that there aren't a great number of men out there who are frustrated legitimately with the custody system. And you made the greatest point: contempt. Very very difficult issue. Um, Contempt in a divorce case is very easy. You were supposed to pay me $10,000. You didn't. I will get that $10,000,
with. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
no doubt.
Anything
Uh,
money related. Yes. Right.
I'll get $10,000 and et cetera. Custody is difficult because you got to look at which version of custody did we violate and what is the remedy. You got legal custody and you've got physical custody. The physical custody violations are very rare. Not very rare, but they're more rare. Once you have a custody order and a schedule, very few people are going to blatantly violate the physical custody schedule because they know that's easy to prove, and there can be repercussions. What are those repercussions? Generally, it's just makeup time, and you've got to go through it. First time is going to be makeup time. Second time is going to be makeup time and maybe a small fine. But the fine doesn't go to you; it goes to the court. So that really doesn't do any good. And to really get it changed, because the more innocuous and difficult ones are the legal custody. She's not telling me about doctor's visits. She didn't put me down as a parent on the emergency form, etc. Those, you are correct. You've really got to chip away at those over time to generally get a judge's attention, to ultimately make a change in the custody arena. Um, the way I try to do that, and it's not always successful, is through a legal fee claim. Okay, she only got a slap on the wrist, but we got my legal fees paid by her. And that's really the only hammer I have in a lot of those, is to say, look, Okay, she took your weekend. What are we going to get? You're going to get a makeup weekend, you know? Um, and well, that's all. Yeah, that's all. But if we add a legal fee claim to it, and she gets whacked for, I don't know, $750, $1,000 in legal fees, maybe next time she'll think about it, because if you can hit in the pocketbook, you can. Now, sometimes you have blatant physical custody violations, but they're not as common. They're not as common as the legal custody, and that's so difficult. It's so difficult because it says, okay, you have to consult on all major decisions. What does consult mean? Does consult mean we have to agree? Does consult mean I have to, you know,
For education.
yeah, exact education, religion, medical, dental, everything,
Yeah.
everything. So it's a difficult course. Um, Eventually, we hope that the parents get to the point where they don't need the custody order and they can work this stuff out. But man, I'm very fortunate. I've been doing this for 35 years. I've been married for 34. And so I've never been through it. I've been through it 10,000 times, but I've never, it's like the doctor who's done, cancer operations 10,000 times, but's never been sick. So I can relate, I can empathize,
Yeah.
um, but I don't know what it's like. And I'm honest, man. If it was me, whew, I don't know that I'd handle it real well. There might be some hurting people around. I don't know, but you've got to just work it through. One of the things that I did want to talk about, particularly in this arena, the custody arena, particularly for the fathers that are on your thing, is the self representation thing.
Oh yeah.
That is a huge, huge pet peeve of mine, and not because I'm looking to line my coffers. Look, I do okay. I'm busy. I don't need more work. Here's the problem, and the analogy, and it's a very simple one, but it's one I'm sure you've heard and can relate to. Um, Despite my physical appearance, I am the least manly man on the face of God's earth. I don't know how to fix cars. I don't know how to use tools. I don't watch sports. I don't know anything. I know how to cook, clean, and practice law. It's about it. When my car needs a repair, I have a very good friend, literally 3 doors down from my house, that is a mechanic, and I bring my car to him. And I will bring my car to him if it needs a new transmission, and I will bring my car to him, as I did the other day, if it needs a fuse replaced. I call him. I said, Donnie, my such and such isn't working. He goes, yeah, it's a fuse, Nick. I said, okay, I'll bring it to you. He goes, you don't have to bring it to me, Nick. It's a $2 fuse. Go get the fuse and put it in. I said, no, I'm bringing it to you. Why? Because if I go to replace a $2 fuse in my car, I'm going to take a $10 fix and make it a $10,000 fix, because I'm going to screw it up. I'm going to screw it up royally. Um, Custody and divorce are the most important decisions of your life, unless you're facing a medical emergency. Don't chintz on it. I get a little offended with family members at Thanksgiving, and when I say, well, obviously, I mean, I know about custody and I know about, well, no, you don't. I don't know what you do for a living, and you don't know what I do for a living. There are nuances to it. And you pointed out earlier, county is everything. You have to know the county you're in. So one of the main things on one of my top five is in picking a lawyer, make sure the lawyer that you're talking to does family law in 2025 in the county in which you live are the top three. I won't go to Center County. I don't know Center County. Well, aren't the laws all the same? Of course, they're all the same. I don't know the judges. I don't know the conciliators. I don't know anything. I know the law, but that has very little to do with what the outcomes are going to be. But yeah, so people try to represent themselves. You're gonna get steamrolled. In the divorce context, you're going to screw it up. You're just not going to get it, and it's not difficult.
Yeah.
But
Right.
every single county has different nuance. I still get stuff sent back. 35 years in Carbon County, I still get stuff sent back. You didn't cross this T, Nick. You didn't dot this I. Page such and such was missing a comma. Monroe County, I got stuff sent back yesterday in Monroe County. I've been filing the same way the same way for 35 years. New law clerk, overzealous law clerk sent back my stuff and said, you quoted the wrong statute. There was one number off. So if after 35 years I still get stuff sent back on divorce and it's not going to work. You're not going to figure out the intricacies. They're not difficult. I could teach you them in a half hour, or I could do it in a half hour, and it's easier to just do it. But on the custody, my concern in representing oneself is maybe twofold. Number one, not getting in all the stuff that needs to get in terms of evidence, in terms of testimony, in terms of what they want to
Right.
hear.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
And but
Yep.
more importantly, stuff coming in that shouldn't come in. People tend to be incredibly honest when they get on that stand. We're taught in law school everybody lies all the time, and that's probably true to some context. But when the average layperson, when the average man gets on that stand, it is a tense situation. And to get them to say things that are against their interest are very easy, and it's nothing overt. My favorite trick is this: when I sense animosity, I will go. And I can do this, man or woman, it doesn't matter. I'll say, hey, let's on cross examination, let's talk. I mean, I know this is difficult for everybody, but let's be honest. You really, deep down in your heart, don't like my client. No, I don't. In fact, you really think my client is, blah 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 blah. Yeah. And if you had your druthers, isn't it? Let's shoot straight. You would say that the less time my client spends with these children is probably in their best interest, wouldn't you? I mean, can we agree on that? Now it's a catch-22. It's a catch-22 because if they disagree with me and say, "Oh no, they're a wonderful parent and should spend lots of time with your client," great, I win. Then there we go. But they don't. 9 times out of 10, they will go, yeah, if I'm being honest, that is true. I don't think your client should have time with the children, blah, blah, blah. And that's it. And I just sit down and go, Your Honor, there's not much more we need to know because the fundamental factor is not necessarily in the enumerated factors, but the fundamental consideration is which parent is going to uphold the other parent as one that the child should love and respect. Northampton County, they have that in a huge sign and they put it on the table at the custody conciliation conferences.
Which
Which
county is
parent?
that? What county?
Northampton.
Okay. All right.
Northampton, down
All
down
right.
in down in down
Okay.
in the Easton. So my point is this: an unrepresented person has no idea that's coming, and they're not ready for it, and they'll fall into traps like that very easily. If I represent somebody, I'm going to say, look, here's where you need to go. Here's where you need to go. You don't ever say anything bad about the other side. You just don't. I never wage a negative campaign. Most people think you go into custody cases and you wage a negative campaign. I'm going to show mom's bad, therefore I'm going to win custody. No, you show mom's bad, you're going to come off as an angry, vindictive, this, that, and the other thing. I don't focus on mom. I focus on. Remember the old song, "Accentuate the Positives." That's what I do. I focus on dad. I don't even mention mom. I mean, in passing, we'll mention mom here or there. There's some factors we can get them in. 2 cents. Yeah, she doesn't let me talk to the kids. Yeah, she doesn't share information. That's 30 seconds of testimony. The rest of it, I'm talking about how great you are and how great your relationship with your kids is and how you're able to do this, et cetera, et cetera. I all positives about me. And then when mom wages a negative campaign, it's very easy for me to say, Your Honor, you see, you see, I'll give you a very, very true example one time, if you don't mind. I represented a doctor in Monroe County, a gentleman who wanted to not only have primary custody of his son, but wanted to relocate down south with his son. And we did a custody trial. And at the custody trial, we went first. We presented our stuff. Mom then testified. And her attorney asked her a question about my guy. And she went on for 20 minutes in a monologue about how he was a horrible father and horrible this and horrible that, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. She got done. The judge said, Mr. Masington, any cross examination? I said, nope, all good. I'm done. And that was it. We left. My client was a little upset. I said, don't worry about it. I think he drank because at night I would always get these 3 a.m. nasty messages. So 3 a.m. that night, I get a message that says, "You son of a bitch, I'm going to sue you for malpractice. I'm calling the bar association tomorrow morning." Blah, blah. I'm like, Doc, what's going on? We hadn't gotten a decision. He goes, "You let her say all those horrible things about me, and I didn't get a chance to repeat." I said, "Doc, let's wait to see what the decision was before you sue me." Decision came down 2 weeks later, and as I had hoped and anticipated, it said, "Mom could not contain her venom about father, even in a court of law. She was voracious, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There is, in paraphrasing, there is no way this woman can be trusted with primary custody because there's no way this venom won't spill over onto that child and he will have a negative impression of father, therefore father wins." And I have that decision in my mind every time I go into court. And thank God it's been pretty successful up till now.
So the only thing so again, to kind of come back, most people have a finite amount of money.
Mm-hmm.
And very few of the fathers that have come to me at the outset who have money have said, "Oh, I'm just going to represent myself." What happens is um, they don't know who to get. They get someone who doesn't do well for them. They give them a smaller county, maybe a $5,000 retainer, larger, more populated counties, five figures, and then you get into all the custody evaluations and all this other stuff that the money starts getting drained out of them. And it's carrying on for a couple of years because they're filing these motions and then this and that and that and
Right.
this and that. And they just reach this point where they've put a disproportionate amount of money that they have available to them. They're even cutting into the funds they were putting aside for their kids, for college or something.
Right.
And it's taken away from what they can do for the kids in the here and now. And they just reached this breaking point where they can't, and they're not getting any outcomes.
Right.
And so
Great.
if
Great.
eventually out of, just, and it's purposeful from the other side a lot of the times to kind of to tap them out
Well,
like,
it's not only purposeful from the other side, Jeff, but a lot of that is lawyer driven. Going back to your 2020, I will tell you that most of the people in my profession, or a lot of people in my profession, I I I I'm I carry one business card with me, and that is for my MMA gym. Because if I'm out in public, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to be, I don't want. I'm not. I don't sit there and go, "Hey, I'm a lawyer," this and that and the other thing. And a lot of that is because of the conduct of other people in my profession. A lot of that is lawyer driven. And one of my top five things when picking a lawyer is the opposite of what most people would think. I get, and maybe it's because of my face, but I get 100 calls a year. I want a pit bull. I want a bulldog. I want this. I want that. No, you don't. That's the last thing you want, particularly in custody. I don't think it's conducive to anything. I don't think it gets you anywhere. Divorce is not that creative. You're going to get the result, the appropriate result, 99 times out of 100 in divorce just by following the steps logically and having reasonable attorneys on both sides. But in
yeah.
custody, I'm always concerned that there are custody lawyers out there that will make it much more expensive and costly than need be. Some of that's just not being realistic, and some of that's not reeling their clients in. Um, Mom says, "Oh, dad should only have supervised visits." Okay, let's go with that. What's the reasoning? Well, he drinks. Well, when does he drink? Well, he drinks Friday and Saturday night. Okay, well, is there something illegal about drinking on a Friday or Saturday? Is he watching the children while he's drinking? No, he goes to bars. Okay, so it's not reeling them in, and a lot of attorneys don't reel them in. So no, you're absolutely right. You can get taken down the primrose path with legal fees, and that's really ferreting out the lawyer at the beginning. That's really where you've got to go. You know, if you're in a high rise building in Philadelphia with Picasso's on the wall, guess what? Guess who paid for that? Guess who's going to pay for that? I mean, just see where you're at. If the attorney's focus in your initial custody consult is on litigation, run. The attorney's focus should be on finding solutions. Okay. So, for instance, my guy the other day, perfect example. He works from 2 to 10 every single day. I could have easily taken a retainer on that. I could have easily filed for primary custody. We would litigate that for the next 12 months.
Right.
I'd make a fortune. He
Right.
can't win. It's
Right.
unwinnable.
Right.
It can't be done. And a lot of attorneys don't have, I don't know if it's the moral compass or the balls to say, no, I can't do that. Nobody can do. And that's what I told him. He was very unhappy. He said, well, I thought you were a good lawyer. I said, I am. That's why I'm telling you I can't win that. It's unwinnable. There's no, and that's the problem. So you've got to find the right attorney, and you've got to be in control. You're the boss.
Yeah.
Now, I have this problem less with my male clients than I or male than female. A lot of times, but I see it on both sides. They let the attorney run the show, and it's like, well, I don't know. I have to ask my lawyer. I have to ask my lawyer. No, your lawyer has to ask you. It's your child. It's your decision. My lawyer says this isn't a good idea. My lawyer says, I'm tired of it. So it's a matter of hiring the right person and remembering who the boss is. You're the boss. And if the attorney says, well, we should go down this path, and you get that feeling in your stomach like, geez, that really seems extreme, it probably is. And run and run. So yeah, I have guilt. I guess now I don't. As a younger attorney, for many, many years, I undercharged because I just felt like, if I hire you to build me a house, there's a house. If I hire you to fix my car is fixed. People hire me. Most of the stuff I do is phone calls and talk and maybe write a couple things. It didn't seem like there was enough product there when I was younger to justify the fees. Now I'm older and more jaded. I'm like, yeah, no, I've been doing this a really long time. And we have different level associates here. And I'm very honest. You have 4 levels of associates. You can start here, their hourly rate is this, or you can have me. My hourly rate is this. Well, it's 2.5 times as much. Yes, I've been doing this for a very long time. But yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. It is financially difficult. The only other thing I would say on that, it is also, other than, again, a terminal disease of some sort, the time that you have to count on the kindness of family and friends if you have them. A lot of people will say to me, gee, my parents could lend me money, but I hate to ask them for this. And I go, well, if you're not going to ask them for this, what would you ask them for? A trip to Jamaica, to remodel your kitchen? I mean, we're talking about custody of your children. Of course, this would be the time you should ask them. And yeah, I mean, it is expensive, but the main way to keep the expenses down is to recognize when you're not controlling the show and the attorney is, and bringing them back in. And trust me, a lot of them need it. A lot of them need it. I mean, they will litigate just to litigate. And I've always found that so distasteful. And it's kind of sad and pathetic too, but that's
And
maybe
if you
why a lot
got
of,
two attorneys of that mindset, that's cha-ching,
yeah, if you got 2
ching.
attorneys of that mindset, you're dead in the water. But even one, it's difficult because you can be the most, and of course in the smaller counties, and you know this because you've been around, you know who they are. There are certain attorneys in not so much in Monroe, Carmen, but in Northampton and Lehigh. I won't take the case. I won't do it. It's against so and so. Oh no, I won't take that. Why not? Because you will end up hating me because we will spend so much time and money. I had a divorce case in Northampton County, 7 banker boxes, 5 years, 6 master's hearings, unheard of, ridiculous, ridiculous. And I so yeah, there are attorneys in counties that that it's just no. I just don't need it in my life.
I can tell you here, and I know most of the attorneys personally, or I'm familiar with them. And over the years, some of them do okay at times, but there's only one people ask if I can recommend an attorney, and there's only one I recommend now, right?
Wow.
Because I think he's you at a younger age.
Well, I
He's the
appreciate
only
that.
guy I'm like, he gets my full recommendation, but
Yeah, I mean, we're pretty lucky in the smaller counties because it's a smaller county. You're going to see me every day. It's very different here. So, for instance, Carbon County is a real anomaly. As you probably know, we every county in the family law system is set up with masters. There's a support master, there's custody masters, and there's divorce masters. And every county has a different number of masters. So in any family law context in Pennsylvania, if you're seeing a judge, something went wrong.
Right.
Something is not good if you're at a judge, because you have to go through lots of layers to get to a judge. It means either the people below really screwed up and you have to get it corrected, or somebody's done something wrong. So you're going to be in front of the master. Um, Monroe County, for instance, has, I think, 4 custody masters, 2 hearing officers, 1 support master, and 2 divorce masters. Carbon County is an interesting enigma. It has 1 custody master, 1 divorce master, and 1 support master, and they're all the same person. Um, and she's wonderful, and I love her dearly, thank God.
Right.
Because if you didn't, you just don't practice in Carbon County. But that's what I'm saying. When it's that small of a community and that small of a bar, if you act like a real horse's ass and over litigate, that's going to get out pretty quickly, and people are going to start to avoid you. But when you get to the bigger counties, because you're going to see everybody, you're going to see me. I have attorneys I have 15 cases with, because there's only 3 or 4 of us doing a high volume of family law in Monroe. So I'll have 15, 20 cases with the attorney. If they're going to, make it difficult in each one, it's going to be, terrible. But in the bigger counties, yeah, it's horrible. So yeah, I mean, it is a financial burden. There's no doubt about it. My rules of engagement we were talking about earlier. I think we were talking before we came on. First one is, I know you're angry. Don't take it out on me and my people. We'll try to help you. Number 2 is, this is expensive. Yes. And there's nothing I can do about it. We try to be reasonable in our fees. We try and keep it to a minimum, and we try to litigate as little as possible, but sometimes it can't be helped.
Hey, so if you can give me a little more time in the one topic I'd like to see what your thoughts are is the interlay between domestic violence, um, the PFA situation, or the supervised visit kind of stuff in
Yeah,
family law.
that is very interesting question. Um, and it's always funny, you know. So we have a new courthouse in Monroe County, and we were online for 5 years during COVID for all family law. So 3 things have happened in Monroe County all at the same time. New courthouse opened, we went back live, and Caden's Law came into effect, all in the same 3 months. So after having done this for the better part of a half a decade, um, people will ask me, "Well, where's the custody office?" I don't know. Well, who's the hearing officer? I don't know. Well, how does this case? I don't know. And they go, "How could you not know?" I go, "Because the judges don't know. Nobody knows. Nobody knows what to do with this Caden's Law." And I was just at a seminar in Philadelphia yesterday, and I think there's already a move in the legislature to repeal Caden's Law, and it was only passed in August. I would love to see that happen, because I think I won't use the bad word, but I think it's nonsense. So PFAs are interesting. Up until Caden's Law in August of last year, yeah, if you had a PFA, okay, it was important you had to talk about it, you had to disclose it. But I was very simple. What was it for? Did it involve the children? No. Okay, then what do I care? You can be a shitty spouse and not be a bad father. You can, well, he called me and blah blah. I don't care. I don't care. So PFAs were there, and under the statute, you have to disclose them in your affidavit when you file for custody. But I mean, again, my first question was, did it involve the children? Were the children there? Did the children see it? Whatever it was. And if the answer was no, then no. And I have made a pretty good living defending PFAs, because PFAs are statute driven. Now, in some counties, forget about it. He looked at me cross-eyed. You're getting a PFA. You're getting a PFA. They hand them out like lollipops. Those counties are frustrating. But the counties that follow the rules are pretty stringent. Physical harm, imminent threat of physical harm, stalking, and false imprisonment. Those are your four areas that you can get a PFA. So I would get hundreds of PFAs over the years where he called me the blank word and he sent me a text message saying, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, maybe you are, maybe you're not. Okay, judge, I'm sorry, that's not a PFA. I had one, she wanted a PFA because her her boyfriend went into their apartment after she broke up with him, took a baseball bat and smashed all of his own stuff. Here's the problem. She wasn't there. She wasn't there. So she wanted a PFA for him smashing his own stuff with a baseball bat, and she wasn't there. I said, Judge, if a tree falls in the forest and nobody hears it, did it make a sound? If I smash my own, I said it may be a crime. I don't know. It may be some type of damage claim. I said, but yeah, he threw a temper tantrum, went in and smashed his own stuff with a baseball bat. Problem is, she was 75 miles away and didn't come home till the next day. And we went on that. So, but with the Cadence Law thing, what they've done, just so everybody's on the same path, is they have moved all of the PFA considerations up to the top of the list in terms of what you look at in custody. And as soon as there's a PFA now, they must consider whether my understanding is they have to go to supervised visits until they explore that. The real question we're all struggling with now is that a PFA with a finding of abuse, or is that a PFA by agreement? Because I will tell probably 8 out of 10 of people that I defend in PFAs agree to a 60-day PFA without admission because it'll just, it's better than facing a 3-year. We'll get it done in 60 days. Probably better you guys are apart anyway, and it really didn't matter. Now I can't say that. Now I can't say just agree to it. So what you're going to end up seeing is much more litigation on PFAs, much
Oh.
more litigation on PFAs because everybody's afraid of this supervised visit thing. And again, if the PFA is which 90% of them are, I was texting my boyfriend, and my husband came in and said, "Give me the phone," and I said no, and he grabbed the phone out of my hand to see who I was texting. It's 90% of them. You make up the scenario, but that's it. Now this guy's going to get stuck with supervised visits until I can get to a hearing to clear that. Look, if the PFA is he came in and beat the hell out of me and the kids, then yes, So and I went to a seminar on, probably shouldn't say this, but I will. I went to a seminar on Cadence Law, which was, I thought, going to be informative about what the law was and how we're applying it. And it was actually the mother of the child who got killed telling us how it came about. And I don't want to sound insensitive, but it's kind of one of those things. Well, I knew he was abusive when, but blah blah blah. It's like, okay, so you knew the guy was an abusive guy, and you married him anyway, and you had kids with him anyway, and then it turned out badly, etc. Very bad situation. But I don't know that we had to revamp the entire Pennsylvania law over one child in a situation like that, and as a result, really handicap the entire system by saying, okay, PFA supervised visits. It's crazy. It's insane. I don't think it's going to last.
So, okay, two things. One's a father I just had communication with last week that something you just said changed kind of what I was telling him. But the other thing is there's actually a house in the bill now to consolidate the 16 factors to like 14, which on the surface you're like, oh, that sounds good. However, if you look at how they are now proposing them, the first three, abuse, neglect on
Yeah.
the factors. You know
Well,
what I
that's what
mean?
it is now. I mean, the sign we talked about in Northampton County was actually the old factors, old as in before August of last year. Number
Yeah,
one, which parent can be trusted
right.
to encourage to promote a relationship
Yeah,
with the other parent. Number one,
yeah.
absolutely appropriate. Now, number one is there a PFA or something like that, et
Yes.
cetera. And what's happening, what's even worse is a lot of the counties, the judges are like, literally almost verbatim, yeah, we don't do that here. I'm like, what do you mean we don't do that here? Yeah, we don't do that cadence thing here. I'm like, and,
Okay.
and me being an old dog, I'm like, fantastic. Let's go back. Where the younger attorneys are going, what do you mean you don't follow cadence level? But yeah, a lot of the older attorneys are like, yeah, I heard about that, and no.
So a father who's been working with me, and I'm trying to help him get an attorney. He's in a different county, whatever. But the PFA that was filed against him was just horrible. It was like a checklist of all the different things you could put into a PFA, including he's grooming his daughter, you know. And so he's getting mixed advice in terms of in the 10-day hearing was put back because he was in transition with an attorney. And I'm like, you need to get that pushed back until you get an attorney in there, right? File to get it pushed back. He got an attorney, but like I'm telling him, because his attorney is saying take the extension of the temporary PFA, right? But he's got other people telling him different things because they're saying it's then going to go on the record that you did it. And so, what you just said about the Cadence law, has that changed how that would be
You know,
viewed?
yeah, I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't know. I don't know.
Okay.
I would love to tell you I know enough about. I've now been to two seminars on Cadence law, and the consensus from everybody is nobody understands it.
Yeah.
Nobody knows how it's going to play out. But here's your other problem: every county's handling it differently. I just don't. Literally, I was in a county the other day, which I've never been to before, and I loved it. It was an old judge, probably my age, but looked a little older, and he was just like, yeah, no, no, not we're not doing not you know, it wasn't that one about it. It was just like, no, that's not we're not doing it that way. And I was like, yes, and the young attorney on their side, what do you mean we're not following the law? I'm like, no, leave them alone. We're good. We're going back to 2024, baby. Here we go. Because his thing was, his thing was very honest. I don't know enough about it. We don't know how it's going to play out. Nobody understands it. It's poorly written as most of the statutes work best. It took them how many years to come up with a relocation statute, and it's the worst written piece of garbage I've ever seen. The definition of relocation makes no sense in the real world, and there's so many interpretations. So my answer is I don't know. Here's the question I think on your end: is a temporary PFA, which was probably granted um, without him being there, is the extension of that. I don't think that counts because there's been no admission and no finding and no agreement. Anybody, and I think the real point of it was she said she checked off everything under the sun. That's fantastic. That's what I want. I want the lunatic plaintiff who thinks that I'm Charles Manson and then I'm running a coke ring out of the basement, a prostitution ring out of the house. I'm grooming the children, et cetera, burning them. That's what I want. And then they write sideways on it because there's not enough room, et cetera. I mean, it literally looks like the rantings of somebody in an asylum. That's the PFA I want. I'm like, Judge, look at this thing.
I think the judge actually kind of was thinking along those lines to a certain extent because the judge still didn't give him supervised visits.
Right.
He gave him every other weekend. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so so I think the judge saw a little bit of a disconnect in that.
And that's because it's a temporary, and anybody can get a temporary. I can't imagine the statute means that if I go in and get an ex parte temporary order, you get supervised leave. I mean, that would be the most powerful thing on earth.
Oh,
And
I've seen it. I've seen
people
it,
will start
brother.
people will
I've
start
seen
using.
it, man.
But I'm saying for the supervised visits, I don't think that gets you there. I don't
Yeah.
think that gets you there. I don't think a temporary has any impact on Cadence law that I understand until it becomes a final order, either by agreement. The concern is, the question is, if it's by agreement, does it have the same impact? Because it's an agreement without admission. It certainly shouldn't. It certainly shouldn't because 90% of those agreements are just convenience. Sure. You want a 40-day PFA? I don't care. What do I care? I don't want to talk to you anyway. So yeah, Cadence law is a mess. It's a mistake. It's an overreaction to a very limited situation that certainly occurs, and it's tragic. But it doesn't occur that much. I mean, I guess my very bad, and I'm not political, so please don't take me there. Analogy would be, why is the why is the most powerful branch of government focusing on 4 transgendered athletes in the entire United States? I don't think that's an issue that hits home for everybody. I don't think it's a problem for most of us. I don't have a dog in the fight. I'm just saying maybe that shouldn't be our top priority. Same thing here. You revamp the entire custody laws of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania after 75 years because one child was killed.
And you make this whole custody situation, which is already too contentious, even more
You
contentious.
make it, you send it into prehistoric times
Yeah.
and make it the most fermented. I'm praying and hoping they repeal that thing and we go back to more sane times. And I think from what I learned at the seminar yesterday, it sounds like that's already in the works. I mean, they're already freaking out about it. I mean, it's just bad.
I hope so. So one last thing, we're thinking of looking at all the 67 counties at their local rules, right? Um, in what's your experience? You work in multiple counties,
I
right?
do.
Because we want to be able to relay and share this on our website as it pertains to custody,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, is there some variation in the counties that you
Oh,
operate in, or
oh, there's variations within the counties that I operate internally within the counties.
okay?
Yeah. So great question. Yes, every county is different. So, for instance, Monroe County is the greatest example. Stroudsburg, Monroe County. I loved practicing custody law in Monroe County up until a month ago. Um, Monroe County was simple. You file your custody complaint, you go to a conciliation conference. One of the four conciliators handles your conference. They make a recommendation. You get a custody order that day or within a day or two. That is your new custody order. If you don't like it, you can go to a full evidentiary hearing before a judge. That was it, done. So we go into custody conferences knowing we're coming out with an order. They can talk to the kids. In fact, children over 8 are required to be there and available for them to talk to. They'll talk to the children. It got a little crazy during COVID, but that's a different story. And so it was amazing. Probably unconstitutional because it was not the process that the Commonwealth has lined up for that. Every other so they go to Carbon County. Now we'll go back to Monroe. Now Monroe has instilled hearing officers. So now you go to a custody conference and they are impotent. They now have no power to enter an order unless there's an agreement. Same as every other county. Total impotence. If there's not an agreement, not going to enter an order. If they can't get an agreement, they send it up to either the hearing officer or the judge depending on what the issue is. We haven't defined which issues are going where. So probably better example is Carbon County. Carbon County conciliation can't make a recommendation unless there's an agreement, tries to get an agreement. If the master there, Deb Smith, great master, if she can't get an agreement, she will send it to a hearing. If the hearing is primary custody or relocation, it has to go to a judge. And that includes 50-50. If the hearing is anything else, weekends, holidays, this, that, and the other thing, it goes back to her for a hearing on the record. Northampton County, different process. Lehigh County, different process. That's why if you're going to, and that's again, it ties into two things we talked about, ties into the self-representation. There's no way you're going to know this. I don't even know it. If I'm going to a county that I haven't been in a while, I say, hey, how are you guys doing it these days? Um, I'll call an attorney. I'll call the master. I'll call the judge. I know the judges, and I'll call up and say, hey, listen, nothing about a case. How am I doing this these days? What's the layout? But it also ties in with with the self representation thing. You got to pick somebody in that county, or that practices in that county. If your attorney can't name you the conciliators and whatnot, but getting back to your point, so Northampton, I forget how many judges they have now, 11, 12, something like that, and they rotate. So if you have a custody trial, it could be with any one of them, and they all handle it differently. They all hate each other, so they all fight
How
with each
about
other.
standards relative to 50-50 custody?
All,
Is that delineated in the local rules?
all depends on the judge. In fact, when you go into a conciliation conference in Northampton County, the conciliator will say things like, well, if you get Judge so and so, you'll probably get 50-50 because he likes 50-50. If you get Judge so and so, you're never going to get 50-50 because she hates 50-50. It's so nuanced. It's so nuanced. And that's kind of what's nice about practicing in the small counties. You can't control the outcome completely, but you can predict the outcome.
You know what you're walking into.
Take Carbon County, for instance. We have 3 judges, all have very different views on custody. One judge, a little older than the rest, very hard to get past that mom thing. He won't say it. He won't say it. And he's an excellent judge. But man, if there's a benefit of the doubt to be given, we'll get back to that penis rule, and you better not have one. Whereas one of the other judges, completely down the middle, and really, what it is. So that's really the essence, and that's really, I think, if there's anything that your audience and your platform users can take away from our discussion is, again, I'm not trying to line my coffers. Know where your case is, find someone in that county, and find someone who does nothing but this all the time. And I don't want the guy that did your parents' will, because the guy that did your parents' will is probably 77 years old, and probably has done 3 custody cases in the last 10 years. I mean, it is, forgive my language, most firms, and this is where we started, a good way to circle back. Most firms and most courthouses consider family law the shit work of the industry. Who gets the family law cases? The new judge, the new and youngest judge. Who gets the family law cases in the law firm? The new and youngest associate. It's getting back to where we started. It's the least lucrative. It's billable hours. It's every minute. You have to bill every minute. You're not going to make, $20,000 in a day on a case, et cetera. I mean, let's say your hourly rate's $300 an hour. Great. That's a great hourly rate, but that means you're capped at a day, $1,500, whereas the criminal guys and the PI guys are out there making $10,000, $20,000 that day. You can't do that. So you've got to do high volume and whatnot. But yeah. So if you find somebody that dabbles in it, it's like going to a doctor's office and saying, proctology, gynecology, ophthalmology, and whatever else, and you walk in, there's one person there. Are you going to that doctor, or are you going to run for the hills? You're going to run for the hills. These attorneys that think they can do everything make me laugh. Half of them can't do anything. Half of them can't do one thing well, but they think they can do everything, and they all think they can do family law because that's the easy part. They all think they can do it. They all think just if anytime an attorney's, when the real estate market takes a dump, guess where all the real estate attorneys show up? in my cases. Hey, Bob Jones, I haven't seen you in 27 years in a divorce case. Why are you doing it? Well, the real estate, when the bankruptcies dried up, they all showed up in divorce law. They all show up here because it's easy, and that's scary. So make sure it's the county, make sure they're reasonable, make sure you like them. And I don't mean that you like them like you have to have dinner with them. Like them like you can't cringe when you walk in the room, because that's never going to work in family law. Criminal and family, you have to have a genuine relationship, or it's just not going to work for you.
All right, man. Well, your time is valuable. I know you got to get the kid to the airport down in Philadelphia.
Yeah, I haven't been to Philly in 2 days. This would be great. Another trip to Philly.
So, well, thank you for your time, Nick.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Nick.